There are so many different ways to connect with God. And as much as I love temple worship, it is the intimacy of home worship that has brought a sense of peace and stability into my life. Not through doing something grand, but by paying attention to the small things, the little variations, the meanings behind what we do. Om Namo Narayan. I think one of the hardest things about a bad phase in life is the fear that God is punishing you. When life collapses, the mind starts searching for meaning, doesn't it? You wonder, is this karma? You wonder if somewhere, without even fully understanding it, you did something terribly wrong. And that's why I was not looking forward to Apara Ekadashi last week. This Vishnu Vrat carries one of the most emotionally difficult ideas in modern language, the forgiveness of sins. And I think many become very uncomfortable the moment they hear that word, because sin creates the feeling that a person can become permanently ruined by what they have done. Apara Ekadashi actually arrives during a remarkably striking period in the ritual calendar. It's very closely followed by Shani Jayanti, Masik Shivratri, and Falharini Kali Puja. Almost as if the days that are leading toward the dark moon in the month of May are all quietly asking the same question. What inside of you is creating instability in your life? And that's where I think the Hindu understanding of sin becomes deeply human. Hinduism does not dismiss wrongdoing simply because human beings are imperfect. Actions shape your relationships, your character, and the direction of your life, which is why both karma and dharma are treated with seriousness. But at the same time, Hinduism rarely treats a person as permanently beyond transformation. In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, "Even if the most sinful person worships me with undivided devotion, he must be regarded as righteous, for he has rightly resolved." And immediately after this comes one of the most compassionate assurances in the text. Krishna says, "My devotee never perishes." I think those lines matter enormously because there are moments in life where people know they have failed, sometimes publicly, sometimes privately, and sometimes the punishment is not society, but your own mind replaying the same mistake over and over again. Over time, through the worship of Lord Vishnu, I have begun to understand my own guilt differently. So here is one example. For about 5-6 years of my life, I was close to a family where the system had quietly replaced integrity with survival, ego, and emotional hunger. And because I myself am an emotionally intense person, I saw much of this sympathetically. I entered that world wanting to heal it. For a while, I even thought I succeeded. I softened relationships. I built an emotional flow. I would emotionally process for many of the people in the family. But these systems often love the person who stabilizes them until that person starts asking for reciprocity. That was the hard truth, that I became the next emotional economy. Eventually, there came a time when I could no longer overfunction. And so I began asking, and I began denying. And that's when those relationships failed me and eventually walked out of my life. Before I reached peace on Apara Ekadashi, I was helped greatly by worship of the Shivling. There is something about Shiva that feels profoundly witness-like. The Shivling does not react emotionally to your life. It simply remains present while you learn to observe yourself with honesty. Over time, I stopped asking, why did this happen to me? Instead, I began asking, what inside of me keeps entering systems where instability feels familiar? And that question began to reduce the confusion. I slowly began seeing something very clearly, that my deepest wound was not abandonment. It was overgiving in the hope that goodness would create safety and surround me with integral people. But people are much more complicated than that. And it's very important to not confuse dysfunction with depth, intelligence with maturity, and emotional intensity with partnership. Those were my actual sins. Those were the deficiencies inside of me that perpetually created moments of instability. Maybe that's what these observances are trying to do. Not erase the past, but help us see ourselves clearly enough that the pattern does not continue repeating. Perhaps God is not always punishing us. Sometimes I feel God is pushing us instead, not by removing consequences, but by making it impossible to keep surviving through parts of ourselves that no longer serve dharma. And I feel that there are so many practices in Hinduism which help you do this. Prayer creates pause where there was impulse. Japa gives rhythm to the restless mind. Repeated disciplines slowly weaken the habits that create suffering. The goal is not denial. The goal is clarity. That's why I spent this Apara Ekadashi very differently from how I once imagined the idea of forgiveness. I did not walk away believing that the past had disappeared, but I walked away with a quieter affirmation that something inside of me, which repeatedly tolerated instability, no longer needed to survive. I had surrendered. If you remember what I said in the beginning, that these observances all gather around the dark moon phase. The moon becomes thinner and thinner before disappearing completely. Yet, nobody believes it's gone forever. There is trust that light can return again, even after the darkness. And Apara Ekadashi asks for the same trust. Not the belief that actions don't matter, but the belief that very discomforting humility and sincere effort can slowly help a person return towards dharma, stability, and eventually to God Himself. Join me in the next episode as I keep exploring these small, everyday ritual insights and what we can actually do with them.